Welcome everyone. We will be waiting for more 5 minutes until everyone hopefully can join in soon. So yeah, let's wait until 5 more minutes. Thank you everyone.
Ya, kita nih kan.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Okay, yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our AtmosTalk sessions this afternoon. Very warm welcome to all of you for joining us virtually today. I am Willy from the marketing team at Atmos, and I'm thrilled to be your host for this edition of AtmosTalk today. And today we are zooming in on a very specific and high potential area, the Philippine Afforestations, Reforestation, and Revegetations, or ARR, in carbon opportunity. And throughout the sessions, we cover the current landscape of IRR projects in the Philippines. And also, we are going to talk more how we can boost this initiative through strategic partnership. And of course, since we are talking about the Philippine carbon market, we also need to highlight a crucial pillar, the role of our indigenous and local communities. As we know together in the Philippines, these communities are the primary stewards of our forests. So their deep-rooted knowledge and legal rights over ancestral lands make them indispensable partners for this project. And yeah, so this event is not just about technology or credits or just regulations. We'll also cover how can we develop carbon projects that are community-led, ensuring that those who protect our nature are the ones who benefit most. Okay, now before we hear from our keynote speakers, I have a quick invitation for all of. Okay, yeah, on your screen, can you please next slide, please? Okay. On your screen, you'll see the QR code for our Atmos check. We highly encourage you to take a moment to register and try our Atmos check. So yeah, for those who haven't registered yet, please do so via the link in the chat or by scanning the QR code on your screen. Okay, now to ground our discussions in the local context and the vital role of our indigenous communities, it is my absolute honor to welcome our first keynote speaker. Please join me in welcoming the Commissioner of NCIP, Madam Nancy Cantabco. Madam Nancy, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. And of course, thank you to the Atmos for inviting us for this conversation. Okay, so I'll just go straight to my presentation or my speech. Okay. The National Commission on Indigenous Peoples is the primary government agency mandated to protect and promote the rights and well-being of indigenous cultural communities and indigenous peoples in the Philippines. As the sole institution authorized to issue certificates of ancestral land and domain title, the NCIP holds legal and institutional stewardship over the country's ancestral domains, territories that are not only home to millions of indigenous people, Filipinos, but are also among the most ecologically significant lands in the nation. That stewardship extends well beyond the issuance of title. With 994 ancestral domains covering roughly 19 million hectares of indigenous land, the NCAP is responsible for ensuring that these territories remain well protected, well governed, and capable of sustaining the communities that depend on them. Central to this responsibility is the integrity of free and informed prior consent by establishing proper communication channels and facilitating genuine consultation. The NCIP works to build informed and empowered communities that fully understand the implications of the partnerships and projects they enter into. This is especially critical in the context of climate action. Close to two-thirds of the Philippines' remaining natural forests sit within the ancestral domains, making indigenous territories essential to any serious national effort on forest conservation and climate mitigation. Nature-based solutions require ecologically intact land and the long-term cooperation of communities who live on and govern that land. They cannot succeed in isolation from the indigenous peoples who have cared for this forest across generations. Now, NCIP's role, therefore, is not simply regulatory. When FPIC is conducted with integrity and ancestral domain governance is respected, the Commission creates the conditions under which ARR and carbon sequestration projects can be pursued with a genuine consent, active participation, and sustained stewardship of indigenous communities, the foundation on which we believe any credible climate intervention must stand. Close to two-thirds of the Philippines' remaining forests sit within ancestral domains. At the heart of these efforts are the indigenous peoples themselves, whose custodianship of the land has long sustained these ecosystems. Through their traditional knowledge, practices, and systems, they have protected our biodiversity and preserved the ecological wealth found within the ancestral lands long before formal conservation systems were established. This deep connection to the land is reflected in the country's rich cultural diversity and biodiversity. However, these same lands and resources are now under increasing threat due to the growing number of mining and energy projects within ancestral domains. Building on their indigenous knowledge systems and practices, communities continue to play a vital role in conservation. In today's context, as new technologies emerge, they're also adapting by engaging with innovative approaches while sustaining their traditions. At the heart of these efforts are the indigenous peoples. As these pressures continue to grow, particularly with climate change further contributing to biodiversity degradation, carbon project opportunities offer both a response to the climate crisis and a potential source for benefits for ICC's IPs. The NCIP continues to move forward with indigenous communities and through its partnership with other organizations in advancing carbon project opportunities while upholding its mandate to protect and promote the rights of ICC's IPs. Carbon project opportunities offer both a response to the climate crisis and a potential source of benefits for ICC's IPs. We have our policy workshops. Session 1, policy workshop, is scheduled on April 22 to 2024, developing FPIC guidelines for forests. This is our scheduled workshop on carbon projects. So we have session 2, policy workshop, scheduled on May 2021. 2024, developing FPIC guidelines for forest. For session 3, we have another policy workshop on June 4, 2024, developing FPIC guidelines for forest carbon projects. Session 4, policy workshop on June 25, 2024, another developing FPIC guidelines for foreign carbon projects. and June 28, 2024, presentation of the draft FPIC and benefit sharing for forest carbon projects guidelines to the Commission and Bank. And on June 7, 2024, review of forest carbon project FPIC flowchart. And on July 5, 2024, initial consultation meeting with Forest Management Bureau with DNR, FMB, and on July 11, 2024, multi-stakeholder consultation, and for the reflection session will be on July 19, 2024. So these activities contribute to climate change mitigation while also supporting ICC's IPs in benefiting from carbon projects through fair and transparent benefit sharing mechanisms anchored on the free and prior informed consent process. As part of its mandate as the lead agency for Indigenous Peoples Affairs, the NCAP has been working to strengthen safeguards within emerging carbon project frameworks, including the development of FPIC guidelines for forest carbon projects. These efforts aim to ensure that the rights, interests, and welfare of ICC's IPs are properly considered throughout the process. While these initiatives may be incremental in nature, they form part of the continuing responsibility of the Commission to ensure that ICC's IPs are informed, consulted, and supported in decisions affecting their ancestral domains and long-term well-being. While these efforts and the continuing work of the Commission, a significant policy has recently been put in place through DNR Administrative Order Number 2026-05, the guidelines governing in the establishment, registration, and monitoring of voluntary forest carbon credit projects in forest lands protected area under National Integrated Protected Area System, or the NIPAS, and ancestral land domains, which provides the national guidelines for the establishment, registration, and monitoring of voluntary forest carbon credits projects. This issuance is particularly relevant as it formally recognizes the role of Indigenous peoples and their ancestral domains within the country's carbon framework. It affirms the exercise of priority rights of ICC's IPs in project areas, reinforces the requirement of free and prior informed consent, and establishes clear provisions on stakeholder engagement, benefit sharing, and safeguards. In many ways, the DAO strengthens and complements the initiatives that the Commission has already undertaken. It provides a more structured and coherent framework within which FPIC processes, benefit sharing mechanisms, and community participation can be operationalized in the context of carbon projects. At the same time, it opens further opportunities for Indigenous peoples to engage more actively, whether as partners or as proponents in carbon project development, while ensuring that their rights, governance systems, and development plans, such as the ADS-DPP, remain central. As we proceed this policy development, a clearer pathway for aligning national climate initiatives with Indigenous peoples' rights and welfare, reinforcing the role of the NCAP in ensuring that carbon project opportunities are pursued in a manner that is both responsible and inclusive. So thank you all.
All right, thank you so much, Madam Commissioner, for those insightful words and wonderful presentations. Now, to give us a broader perspective on the tech and the carbon project developer side, please join me in welcoming the CEO and founder of Atmos, Ms. Natalia Rialuki. Ms. Natalia, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Willie. Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. First of all, I would like to extend my congratulations to Madam Secretary of the NCIP for the leadership and all of the hard work in pursuing and eventually coming up with the 2026 regulation regarding the carbon market for the Philippines. It is, of course, a very big milestone, and we're very happy to hear and celebrate the result of the regulation. So congratulations again, and thank you very much, Madam Secretary, for being with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ria. I am the CEO and founder of Atmos. And for those who haven't known us, we are a project developer that focuses on developing blue carbon projects and landscape restoration. We have been in the space for the past 4 years and work with over 800 projects through our tools technology that is called AtmosTalk. And we have processed more than 80 million hectares of land for its eligibility for carbon projects. And we're very thankful for all of your support and your trust in making sure that we can help everyone in developing carbon projects with high integrity. So today is going to be very special because we're going to be talking about reforestation. In the fight against climate change, Southeast Asia has a very big potential, not only as a carbon sink, but also as an area to be reforested to further sequester the emission that is in our atmosphere. However, in conducting removals or agroforestry or reforestation projects, sometimes a lot of us actually meet a lot of problems. How do we improve the survivability of what we plant? Which species is actually very good for us to plant in a certain area? How many seedlings and what is the right planting pattern in order for us to maximize the effort in restoring the forest, mixing not only native species, but also species that can also provide economic benefit to the community as well. Philippines, in its very own heart, is very unique. Across the 30 million hectares of the country's area, our technology, we have tried to assess and scan the area for afforestation, reforestation, and revegetation potential. And the country has over than 8.8 million hectares that are eligible for doing this carbon project activity. And it also possesses more than 160 million tons of potential carbon sequestration and carbon credits for the country. So as we can see, there is a lot of potential. And of course, in order to develop a very good and successful reforestation project, it is only can be successful if we do it hand in hand with the community itself. So we are very glad that the speakers from today, not only that we have the honor of Madam Secretary from NCIP, but also Christos, Nicole, Ray, and Vilma that are very knowledgeable in the space on how to actually execute a very good and successful restoration activity. What do we need to care about? What are the learning experience? How do we make sure that we can also make sure the benefit is trickled down until the community? So that is why our today's session is very, very special. And last but not least, it is also another special day, especially also for Atmos, because today we are launching our new latest product, which is the Atmos Reforestation Engine. The intention is this extension of our AtmosTalk will be able to help project developers, project owners all over the country, all over the region, to be able to identify what is the right species, what is the right planting pattern, how much seedlings do you need, so you can also estimate the right budget for your project in order to maximize and make sure that we have one successful project. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very excited to hear about the session, and I wish you a very fruitful session. Thank you so much, Willie. I hand it over to you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Natalia, for your insightful words. Now, before we move into our panel discussions, let's make this digital gathering official. I'd like to invite everyone from the keynote speakers, from the panelists, from all of the attendees here, if you're able to please turn on your cameras for a quick virtual group photo. Our team will take the screenshot on are we ready yet? Okay.
And we can spotlight all of the speakers.
Yeah,
Really.
please spotlight all of the speakers and the keynote speakers. Okay, that's great. Okay. Okay, are you ready? Give us your best smile on the count of three. One, two, three. Give us your best smile. Okay. Okay, wonderful. One more time, maybe. Okay, on the other page. Okay, on the count of three. One, two, three. Wonderful. Okay, thank you, everyone. It's great to see all of those faces. Okay, unfortunately, Miss Madam Nancy Katamko is need to go, and we're very thankful for her presence here and for insightful words, and we are looking forward to speak more with her later. Okay, now everyone, it's now time for our deep dive panel. To lead these conversations, I'm handing the floor over to someone who currently very active in engaging with the Philippine carbon market. He is Mr. Rizky Ambardi, FVP Commercial of Atmos. Mr. Rizky, the floor is all yours.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay. Yeah, happy to have the panel discussions today. So it's good we are hearing from the chairperson herself, Nancy Katamko, about the role of the CATI and indigenous people regarding the potential forestry-based project. As he mentioned, like two-thirds of the forest cover is actually based on the CATI area. So I think it's a strategic collaboration rooted to community engagement and stakeholder engagement via FPIC, which already translated in the regulations and so on. So I think it's a very good opportunity to work directly with the community. So in today's panel sessions, I have four wonderful speakers here, panelists that will share the stage with me. Uh, at the first, let me introduce from the NCIP as well, Raizen Joseph de los Trinos, or usually I just call him Del for short. So Del is currently as the Director of Foreign Assisted Program and International Relation Office, shortened by FAPIRO, at the National Commission on Indigenous People. He brings critical expertise in coordinating international partnership, bringing global climate initiative with indigenous governance to ensure that foreign assisted projects align seamlessly with sustainable and right-based frameworks. So please welcome Del. How are you? Are you doing well?
Yes, thank you for inviting me here. I'm doing well.
Yeah, I'm actually in the same room with Del. So yeah, it's
It's
funny. So okay, other than Del, we have our second panelist. Our second panelist, his name is Christos Karapiperis. He's the co-founder of Earthscale Global. So Christos, operating at the intersection of climate finance, technology, and natural asset. Christos specializes in structuring high-integrity nature-based projects in emerging markets. His focus is on creating bankable, scalable model that delivers strong alignment for institutional investors while ensuring durable long-term value creation for local communities. Earthscale itself is a company focused on natural asset project development platform, uh, focus in the high-integrity nature-based solutions project, especially regarding today's topic, afforestation, reforestation, and revegetation, including with agroforestry and community-based carbon project. His company approach is long collaborative partnership focused heavily with local community. So Christos, happy to have you here. I believe right now you're in France, right? You're still on mute, Christos.
Yes, I can hear you very well. Thank you very much, Risky, for the invitations. Yes, you are right. I'm in France right now.
All right, thank you. And our third panelist, we have Nicole Torres. She is currently the program director at Parabucas. Nicole has been working in the environment and rights sector since 2007. Currently serves as program director, a woman-led Asia-based international consultancy focusing on law and policies related to the climate change, environment, and sustainable development. She has been following the UNFCCC since 2014, tracking agendas items on REDD plus safeguard, indigenous peoples, and local community rights and Paris Agreement Article 6. So happy to have you here as well. Hello, Nicole.
Good afternoon, Pakriski. Thank you for having me.
All right, our last panelist, we have Filma Lokra. Filma is a seasoned professional with over 28 years of experience in community development, forest management, and institutional planning. She currently serves as an assistant professor at Bukitnon State University, finance officer of Buktamco, and expansion manager of CCCO2, where she leads Carbon and Sustainable Partnership Initiative, holding a master's degree in applied science with honors in international rural development from Lincoln University, New Zealand. Her career bridged academic expertise and field experience, which the right person to talk more about how to collaborate with the local community. So, Filma, can you hear us and say hi?
Yes, yes, Risky. Good afternoon, everyone.
Great. So all of the speakers I think already said is already here. So let's start panel discussions. Of course, first I have, so the model today, we will have a Q&A from myself to all of the panelists. And later, feel free for the audience to, to write in the chat if you have any questions to specific panelists or one type of panelists, feel free to put the questions on the chat. So I think in round one, I would like to talk a bit about the macro picture about the regulations, NDC, and the ground introduction, focusing on the high-level regulatory and how it can support carbon project in the Philippines. So my first questions I'll address to Del first. Maybe could you state the stage of this panel by explaining how NPIC process align with the international carbon project development, for example, like the FPIC and so forth and so on and so forth. So the audience know more about what is the regulation and how is the step to actually work with the IP.
Thank you, Rizky. I think it is important to first begin by situating carbon projects within a broader tension that indigenous communities have long faced, which is the tension between extractive development and conservation. In extractive industries, communities are asked to consent to projects with potentially irreversible impacts, while in conservation, they are sometimes restricted from lands they have traditionally governed. This is what we call fortress conservation. In both cases, the issue is not simply the nature of the project, but the structure of decision making, where communities are often placed in a reactive position rather than being the ones who define outcomes. This is precisely the framework that IPRA, or the Indigenous Peoples' Rights Act, Republic Act 8371, seeks to address. FPIC is not just a compliance requirement, but an expression of self-determined governance, requiring that decisions are made through customary or traditional decision-making processes based on full disclosure and free from coercion or duress. This is reinforced in the latest carbon policy issued by the ENR last February, as cited by Chairperson Secretary Nancy earlier, where forest carbon projects within ancestral domains are explicitly required to comply with FPIC and broader community safeguards, including participation, benefit sharing, and grievance mechanisms. At the same time, the DAO introduces an important evolution in how we understand carbon projects. It recognizes that these projects must meet the standards of credibility, permanence, and environmental and social integrity, while also aligning with national climate commitments and international carbon markets. What this means in practice is that carbon projects are no longer seen as purely environmental interventions, but as long-term governance arrangements that affect land use, livelihoods, and resource control. This is why the distinction between extractive and conservation projects become less meaningful from the perspective of indigenous communities. A carbon project, even if conservation oriented, can still redefine access to forests, impose restrictions, and reshape local economies. The critical question is not whether a project is good or bad, or whether if it is green, but whether it is community defined and community governed. This is where FPIC aligns with carbon project timelines in a more substantive way. The DAO itself structures carbon development as a phased process, beginning with feasibility, stakeholder engagement, and eventually full implementation, with FPIC embedded in different stages. When undertaken early, FPIC clarifies rights, governance structures, and expectations, which are exactly the elements that investors and carbon standards look for in assessing long-term viability. So the alignment is not about making FPIC fit carbon timelines. It's about recognizing that carbon projects must be designed around FPIC and indigenous governance from the very beginning. Otherwise, we risk reproducing the same governance failures we have already seen in both extractive and conservation models. Thank you, Rizky.
Great. What a way to set the stage. So my next questions, I have questions to Nicole. How do forest carbon and carbon market currently figure into Philippine national determined contributions?
Okay. So I'll build a little on what Director Trinos has touched on in the context of avoiding fortress conservation and extractive models in the forestry sector in the Philippines. So it's just to recap that recent data shows that the Philippines is losing significant forest cover, often to conversion for infrastructure or settlements development, and agriculture and logging activity. So that's why support for forest conservation and restoration is especially critical. This is recognized in the upcoming iteration of the Philippines NDC. So, unlike the earlier NDCs or nationally determined contributions, which countries are required to submit periodically as part of their obligations under the Paris Agreement. So in the upcoming iteration of the Philippines NDCs, which we expect to be announced very soon, the forest and other land use sector will be considered in setting mitigation targets. So that means that the Philippine government will be undertaking measures related to reforestation and the conservation of forest carbon stock. The Philippines has also been consistent in expressing interest in the opportunities presented by market mechanisms under Paris Agreement Article 6. So, what all of this very broadly points to is a likelihood that engagement in both voluntary and compliance carbon markets is part of a long term strategy for the Philippines. So, we can expect that there will be a lot more regulation and a lot more discussion in the government space on this moving forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Nicole. Building on that a bit, maybe I will go to Vilma. As your work recently, you have secured collaboration with one of the area in Bukidnon in Kibua. Can you briefly introduce about how you actually approach the community there and yeah, tell us more about that.
Thank you, Risky, for that question. At CCO2 Philippines, our project in situ Kibuwa Bukidnon focuses on restoring forest in a way that helps both the climate and the community. We combine tree growing with agroforestry so the land can support both nature and possible livelihoods. This work is within an ancestral domain covered by a CADT. So from the start, we recognize that the indigenous peoples are not just stakeholders, they are the rightful partners and stewards of the land. A key part of our approach is strengthening people's organization because strong and organized communities are essential for long-term success. At the same time, we make sure that everything we plan is based on what the community wants and is only finalized through the FPIC process. In terms of entry, MOU, and early engagement, our entry in the community followed what is locally understood as kilalaha and sayuda, a culturally grounded process of introduction, trust building, and mutual understanding. In this stage is very important because it sets the tone. It is where trust begins. This stage is purely social and relational. No project terms are discussed, no commitments are made, and no benefits are offered. It is simply about respecting customary processes and establishing trust. To formalize the initial coordination, a memorandum of understanding was executed with the CADI leadership. However, it is important to clarify the nature and purpose of this document. MOU is strictly non-binding. It does not constitute consent. It does not authorize any project implementation, and it does not define project terms, benefits, or land use arrangements. Its purpose is limited to establishing good faith coordination, recognizing mutual intent to explore possibilities, providing a reference for engagement while awaiting formal processes. And most importantly, the MOU was submitted to the NCIP office together with the letter of intent. It is fully subject to the FPIC process and NCIP validation. It carries no legal effect unless the FPIC is completed. In terms of coordination with the local community, all activities beyond initial entry are undertaken only in coordination with NCIP and strictly within their guidelines. At this stage, our engagement is limited to providing general non-technical information about carbon projects, listening to community perspective, and ensuring that discussion remain informational, non-directive, and non-committal. We do not negotiate, do not enter into agreements, and do not introduce incentive outside the FEIC framework. Our engagement follows three simple principles. First, we respect the process. We don't negotiate or make agreements outside proper channels. Everything is coordinated within CIP and recognize community leaders. Second, we focus on clear and honest information. At this stage, we only explain in simple terms what a carbon project is, its possible benefits and risks. There are just general discussions. We don't go into detailed agreements or benefit sharing yet. Those are properly discussed during the APIC process. Then third, we listen to the community. We take time to understand their needs, priorities, and plans for their own development. We may explore possible areas like livelihoods, trainings, and also strengthening people's organization, but nothing is promised or started at this stage. From there, we align closely with the NCIP to ensure that all steps are compliant with the FEIC process. At this stage, early stage, prior to EPSC completion, our role is limited to introducing the project at the general level and listening to community perspective. We ensure that all engagement remain non-committal and non-prescriptive, avoiding any form of negotiations, agreement, or commitment until community has formally exercised its rights to free, prior, and informed consent. At the end of the day, the goal is simple. If the community gives consent through FPIC, the project should reflect their decisions, their priorities, and their vision for their future. And also in terms of technical approach, we present a preliminary restoration framework for shared understanding subject to validation during the FPIC process. Our planting strategy generally considers use of native species suited to the local ecosystems, appropriate spacing and density, built-in forest protection measures to ensure long-term sustainability, and recognition of community roles in stewardships. These are illustrative examples only and do not represent a proposed or agreed project design. All the technical parameters remain indicative and non-prescriptive and will only be finalized through the formal FPIC process, ensuring that decisions are community-led, culturally appropriate, and aligned with NCIP guidelines. Ultimately, our project in situ Kibua is not just about generating carbon credits, it is about restoring forests while strengthening community rights, governance, and livelihoods, and fully aligned with national climate goals and global commitments under the NDCs. We see this as a long-term partnership where climate action and community development move forward together. So thank you, Risky.
Thank you, Vilma. I think Next is for Christos as the non-Filipino here, and as someone who have keen interest in project in the Philippines. Just curious, from your perspective, international perspective, why do you think Philippines is a prime destination for ARR project, and what exactly are global buyers looking for?
Yes. Thank you for the question, Risky. From the international developer perspective, the Philippines stands out because it brings together three elements that are rarely aligned in one place. The first is the land tenure clarity through CADT, which is essential for a long-term project. The second one is the structure FPIC process, which provides a clear pathway for the community engagement. And the third is the strong ecological potential with significant opportunities for restoration at the scale. But what really makes the difference today is not just the potential, but it's the credibility. Global buyers have become much more selective. They are no longer looking for low cost volume for carbon credits, but also they are looking for high integrity projects that can stand out of the scrutiny over the time. That means we need a clear coverage, a real community participation, long-term durability, and transparent, verifiable impact. So that in that sense, Philippines is not just an attractive because of the natural assets, but it's attractive because it has the building blocks to develop trustworthy long-term natural capital project. And that's ultimately what the market is moving forward.
Thanks, Christos. Maybe next I'll go back to Dell, building on what Christos said, that he did say that for long-term projects such as carbon, 40 years, it has a strong precedence because of the CATI legal tenure. Um, so based on that, maybe Del, you want to build on that? Aside from the tenure, maybe if we're talking specifically about ARR planting activities, what do you think is benefit working with the CATI and the IP within the Philippines?
Thank you for that, Rizky. In the local policy setting, DNR has already provided for an initial policy direction as to how carbon projects can operate within the Philippines and the technical instruments necessary to process such applications. So the difference between a technical instrument issued by DNR and a CADT is that a technical instrument is generally limited to a 25-year plus 20 another 25-year renewability uh safeguard. So you are allowed for an initial 25 years, but then after expiration you are allowed to renew for another 25 years. For carbon projects, it will take at least 35, 40, 45 years for it to become fully sustainable because the issue here is long-term conservation and protection. So, as to DNR's part, while the 25-year plus 25-year guarantee is already a good start, what we should also see is that these general instruments are not renewed automatically. There can be changes in policies after 25 years. There can be changes in how the government sees these programs as part of a bigger policy direction of the national government. I can give you an example. I can give you an example. A Supreme Court decision previously stated that the 25-year renewal is not automatic. It is still subject to the prevailing public policy standards and, of course, if it is within ancestral domains, subject to the consent of the IP communities therein. So it means that it should not be seen as something automatic that you are allowed to stay in an area to possess an area for 50 years. It must still be taken at a piecemeal level that is 25 plus 25, and the renewal is subject to changing regulatory frameworks and the standards that might be imposed by the government in the future. However, for ancestral domain titles and ancestral land titles and claims, this does not it doesn't work that way because these are titles. These are permanent private properties that enjoy permanency, enjoy effectivity and legality after 1 year from registration. Partnerships for conservation projects within these areas are uh, have a better semblance of permanence because you as long as you maintain a good relationship with the community, a good partnership with the indigenous communities who own the area, the project can just continue and continue and continue as long as it is needed. So that's the key difference between an instrument and a title. And of course, in the Philippines, there is also called the doctrine of native title, which is an old Supreme Court decision, Supreme Court of the United States actually, that recognizes pre-conquest rights. The title is only a formal recognition by the state. However, IPs that generally possess, occupy, and claim these timberlands, these forest areas, are provided by law property rights over these areas as well. So if we see the legal framework for indigenous territories in the Philippines is already in place. And even the enabling law, the charter that created the NCIP, recognizes the environmental role of indigenous communities, which complements the activities for afforestation, reforestation, and revegetation necessary for carbon markets. Thank you.
Thank you, Del. That's very clear. I think so. Not all of the countries' regulation is the same, but the CATI alignment is very aligned for a long-term projects such as carbon project development for ARR or for conservations. So it's aligned with what Christos said and what you just said. Building on that, I'll go back to Nicole again. So do you want to add more on that, and maybe like what can you tell us about the potential policy and regulations relating to this?
Yeah, thank you, Pakriski. Well, I think Director De Los Rinos was already very comprehensive, no, in his explanation of the difference between these kinds of tenorial instruments. So perhaps what I can add for this afternoon are some updates on recent regulations that have been issued by the Department of Environment and Natural Resources. One of these was already touched on by Chairperson Katamko, but let me go through what I think might be the most significant administrative orders from the DENR. So the first is DENR Department Administrative Order 2026-02. This was issued in January of this year. This adopts the Philippine Readiness in the Voluntary Carbon Market Roadmap. So it's a roadmap. It's intended for implementation from 2026 to 2030. And as a roadmap, it's still just a framework for what's needed in terms of policy development, data analytics, institutional mechanisms, and financing that can guide participation in voluntary forest carbon initiatives moving forward. So I'll point out as well at this point that this is a roadmap for forest carbon specifically. So the energy sector has its own regulations for transition credits, and there will likely be an issuance for the agricultural sector as well. So the roadmap is intended for application to terrestrial forest ecosystems and blue carbon ecosystems. So these are mangroves and seagrass beds. It focuses on 4 priority areas for readiness. So it spells out what is needed in these 4 priority areas so that the Philippines can really optimize its participation in voluntary carbon market initiatives. Right, so the first priority area is the policy framework. So that covers the second administrative order that we'll get to shortly. And there's also an executive order expected from the Office of the President and a national Article 6 strategy blueprint that's being developed. For data analytics, MRV, and carbon registry systems, this will entail the establishment of a forest carbon credit database to track projects and their credits, and a forest spatial dataset portal, which will operate with the National Forest Monitoring System. So developing these in the span of time that the roadmap gives us, so that's 2026 to 2030, it's important so that there is accurate and transparent data, and that's crucial to credibility in the market. For institutional mechanisms and capacity building, I think we can expect that there will be an interagency technical working group on carbon finance that will be established quite soon. And then for market development and sustainable financing, this covers plans for long-term financial support and incentives for forest carbon initiatives, including exploring potential tax initiatives and taxation schemes. So this is going to be done in consultation with the Department of Finance, which has already begun studying revenue sharing policies. So that's the first instrument that was issued early this year. And then it was followed very shortly after by the administrative order that was referred to by Chairperson Katamko, DENR DAO 2026-05. So these are the guidelines governing the establishment, registration, and monitoring of voluntary forest carbon credit projects in forest lands, protected areas under the National Integrated Protected Area System, and ancestral lands and domains. So it's a very comprehensive administrative order. It covers many of the things that Chairperson Katamko and Director De Los Trinos have mentioned earlier, but it spells out requirements in terms of legal capacity. So who is allowed to engage in forest carbon initiatives in the Philippines? There are also requirements with regard to financial capacity and technical expertise. And as mentioned by my colleagues earlier, the additional requirements for ancestral domains, ancestral lands, as well as forest lands and protected areas. Right? It also specifies the process for project development. So it might be a good reference. It might be time might be a little short to go through it comprehensively, but there is a process for project development that's spelled out in that DAO. So I think it would be worth it to like go through the DAO comprehensively, like at our own time, because I think a lot of the developments in the Philippines moving forward will be informed by its implementation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you. Maybe going back again to Vilma, can you share us about your lesson learned when, if we talk specifically about reforestation project activities, by trying to work together with the communities, how are your key learning and on doing that?
Thank you, Risky. That's a very important point. In projects within CADT area, we have learned that you cannot start with planting. You must start with people, process, and of course, trust. Under the IPRA law, any project affecting ancestral domains must go through the APIC process. But beyond compliance, APIC is what ensures that the project is legitimate, culturally aligned, and sustainable. So let me just share practical steps and key lessons from our experience in Sitio Kibua. First, we have to have a respectful entry through the kilalaha or the sayuda. It is about building trust and understanding local governance. And number two, coordination with NCIP. Before any formal activity, we coordinate with NCIP. They guide the process and ensure that all engagements are aligned with APIC protocols. And of course, with that, the field-based FBI, this is a joint validation process, understanding the boundaries, stakeholders, and potential impacts of the project. It ensures that the right communities are engaged. And of course, number four, the FPIC process, which is being led by the NCIP. And of course, that includes the pre-conference, approval of the work and financial plan, community assemblies, sector consultations, deliberations on customary decision-making, consensus and consent formalized to a resolution. At this stage, the community has the right to accept, reject, or modify the project. And afterwards, after the FPIC, we do the co-design of the project regarding land use arrangements, benefit sharing mechanisms, roles and responsibilities, safeguards for culture, environment, and livelihoods. And of course, we need to have a capacity building and institutional strengthening. We support the formation or the strengthening of people's organizations, ensuring that community can manage, monitor, and benefit from the project. And last is the implementation, that is including the planting. So planting comes last once everything is agreed, understood, and owned by the community. And of course, with the issuance from the NCIP office with a certificate of precondition after the FPIC process. So the key lessons from the ground: number one, trust takes time and we cannot rust. Skipping early engagements will lead to resistance or failure later. And number two, FPIC is not a formality, it is a foundation. If done properly, it reduces conflict and ensures long-term stability. Number three, clarity prevents conflict. Communities must clearly understand long-term commitments, that is forest protection, benefit timelines about carbon revenues are not immediate, and land use implications. And fourth is balance environmental goals with community needs. For example, while we promote no commercial timber harvesting in restoration areas, we work with the community to designate separate zones for sustainable use based on agreements. Number five, community ownership determines success. That it means projects succeed when communities see it as their project, not as an external intervention. And the last one is process discipline is critical. Even well-intended actions such as offering incentives too early can jeopardize MPIC compliance and trust. So in CATI areas, development is not just technical, it is relational and rights-based. You cannot rush into planting. You must first invest in trust, respect the FPIC process, and co-create the project with the community. Only then can restoration truly take root and last. Thank you, Risky.
Thank you so much, Vilma, for very nice key takeaways. To be honest, I want to make it as a T-shirt: "People first, then planting and restoration," because in a way it's about the people. So, Christos, building on what all of the other panelists have said, how do you think about that? And specifically, why ARR is interesting to develop based on your perspective as the international developer?
Yes, risky for, let's say, for investor perspective, it's very important to establish a strong partnership with the local communities. This partnership, it's not a nice to have, it's a core risk and value driver. ARR project, as you mentioned before, you, Dell, and other participants operates over decades. Contracts alone, this means that contracts alone cannot guarantee continuity on the ground. What actually sustains for a project, let's say, for over 20 or 30 years, is a local ownership and alignment. There are three reasons this matters. The first is the risk reduction, of course, for the investors and for the project developer, because without the real community buy-in in the project, maybe we face delays or even a failure. The second is the operational continuity, which means that communities are the ones who ultimately protect, maintain, and grow the asset over the time. And the third is the value creation. When communities benefit economically, they become active partners and not passive participants. That turns the project into a self-reinforcing system. So from the investor standpoint, the strong community partnership directly translates to lower risk, higher integrity, and more durable returns. Without it, you may have a project on the paper, but not a project that can actually last. And one thing I would like to add is that we must should understand that community alignment is not a ESG layer, but it's a foundation of a longer-term investability.
Thank you, Christos. Well said. Well said. So, lastly, I think before we go to Q&A session for the people on the chat, feel free to raise the questions in the chat box, and inform us which questions you intended to. But maybe I have one question for all. Maybe can go one by one from Del, Nicole, Vilma, and Christos. Just one closing statement from your end. If we're talking specifically about how in the future we can scale reforestation's activities by working closely together with the communities. If there is one or two sentence, or if more than that, it's okay lah. What is the main key takeaways we can scale um, reforestation based carbon project by working together with the communities? Maybe Dels first.
Uh, the requirement or the necessity to engage in carbon markets right now uh, provides an opportunity for stakeholders to really employ economies, employ economies of scale for local communities on how they can participate with these markets. So for our part, the NCIP welcomes these opportunities because this would really help local communities, local indigenous communities to look for to look for greener pastures for activities that they have been doing since time immemorial. So it's about time that the mainstream society recognizes the role of indigenous communities in conservation efforts and protecting the environment. So I guess for our part, the NCI to also add, we will the NCI to as a response to the DNR's issuance of a guidelines governing carbon projects. The NCIP is currently drafting a guidelines on nature positive projects, which would involve participation to carbon markets, because there are still policy differences as to how the DNR sees indigenous-led conservation and its consequent participation to carbon markets. So I am the lead bureau drafting that guidelines because my bureau is the one uh, designated to be the focal for everything environment related. So I would be happy to work with you guys, especially to improve these policies and shape how indigenous communities can participate into these markets.
Thanks. Maybe Nicole next.
Thank you, Patriski. I think for my part, um, I'd just like to really underscore the importance of social and environmental safeguards for carbon market initiatives. Of course, like these are referenced throughout the administrative orders, and we can expect that they will be referred to in future guidance. But as Ma'am Vilma said, I think it's not enough that safeguards are treated as like tick boxes for compliance. It's really, really important that these safeguards are in place, because without them, we cannot say that carbon forestry programs are working as they should. That is, we cannot say that they are helping address anthropogenic climate change, and we cannot say that they are creating real and lasting social good for communities. So putting safeguards in place, I think, it's not just a matter of having the right policies there, although that is an important component of it, but it's also a question of making sure that everyone, all of the stakeholders, all of the administrators, the regulatory agencies understand why these safeguards are important. And again, not just for compliance, but to make sure that these initiatives are really working the way that they should be working. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Maybe Vilma next.
Thank you, Risky. My takeaway, if we want carbon projects to deliver real and lasting benefits, we must scale responsibly, anchored in rights, grounded in community ownership, and guided by transparency and accountability. In the end, we are not just scaling carbon, we are scaling trust, governance, and long term partnerships. Thank you.
Thank you. Uh, Last but not least, Christos.
Yes. Risky to ensure this project deliver real and lasting benefits to local communities, we have to design them correctly from the very beginning. This means that we start with a sequence that community alignment and FPIC must come first before any technical execution. And if that foundation is weak, the benefits won't last. Second, the communities need to be a part of the economical model, not just the implementation, which means that we must put in place clear revenue participation, long-term income streams, and roles in decision-making and stewardships. Third, we need to the governance and transparency structures that ensure commitments are followed over decades, not just a project large. And finally, projects must be designed for a long-term performance and not short-term outputs. This is not about planting trees, it's about building systems that community can rely on over time. Thank you very much, Risk.
Thank you. Now I leave up to the question from the audience. So we have two questions already. The first one addressed to Christos. From your experience, how long does it realistically take from project inception to the point where an ARR project can generate carbon credit and ready for the international market?
Yes, I think that, of course, in every different project, the time depends. But I think that everything about 5 to 7 years safe assumptions. 7 to 5 years.
Okay. Also, question from Ying Shan Lau from Singapore to Dell. Please elaborate more on what are the considerations regarding IP participation in carbon market.
In our experience with the free and prior informed consent process, the primary consideration is of course economic. Most indigenous communities here in the Philippines live in geographically isolated and disadvantaged areas where economic opportunities are quite limited. So, uh, this goes as well to extractive projects wherein the percentage of share for IP communities really dictate. I mean, this is the stark reality. I am an IP myself. By the way, I am an IP myself, so this might be quite a sensitive topic for me to talk about it. But we need to face the reality that some community decisions are influenced by their economic realities. But of course, when we analyze that further, there are also other considerations such as sacred areas and protected areas within ancestral domains, which are also lived realities that these communities face on a daily basis. So I guess the consideration is really a matter of how proponents or applicants will really negotiate to look at these contradictions to unearth these issues in the community level. And of course, NCIP is there to facilitate these discussions and to, of course, we are not there to negotiate on your behalf or on applicants' behalf, but of course, just to show the interconnected issues currently faced by communities.
Thank you, Del. There's a next question from Nadia. How does the panel address the risk of double counting, particularly given the Philippines may also rely on carbon market to meet its on this NDC commitment? Maybe this is more addressed to Nicole, if you can
Yes.
help.
Yes, I think I can help answer this. Okay, so the issue of avoiding double counting, I think that has a lot to do with the registries that are in place and also compliance with the processes that are put in place under Article 6 of the Paris Agreement. So one of those requirements under Article 6 is the designation of a national authority to oversee all of the Article 6 transactions of the country. And this is what the executive order from the Office of the President is expected to cover. So once there is a designated national authority for Article 6, that means that any forest carbon credits that go towards meeting Article 6 commitments, such as those under joint crediting mechanisms that go through the Sustainable Development Mechanism under Article 4, have to be authorized by the designated national authority and then also subject to corresponding adjustments. So basically, that means they will be taken. It will be clear which of those credits will go towards meeting the country's NDC and which will go to, for example, the implementing partner for 6.2 or for the requirements under 6.4. So a lot of that will be up to the processes that will be set in place by the national designated authority, which I think at this point is expected to be the DANR. So I hope that helps. It's not quite a straightforward answer yet because we're also waiting to see what that will look like. But there will be compliance with what the Paris Agreement and subsequent decisions have put in place. Thank you.
Thanks. I think one more question. Probably this is the last question before we close the panel session. Is there a concrete example of an ARR project in the Philippines that has full institutional financing, and what are the critical success? I'm not sure who can answer it. Maybe I think I can answer also, but maybe Nicole or Dale, if you know.
Perhaps Ma'am Vilma, since
Or Vilma. Okay, if not, I think I can answer this one on behalf of the others. So for example, if we're talking about Vera registry, there's actually one project, one ARR project that last year has already gone through the validation phase. So it's already audited by Vera, gone run and already validated by the auditors. And it is the first ARR project in the Southeast Asia or countries. The project is from Rhizome. It's about like bamboo reforestation project, and it's located in the Philippines as well. From my discussion with the people there, I think it's more of a one clear collaboration with the local community, and also because their main focus is in the bamboo project as well. They have the expertise and experience planting and harvesting a lot of bamboo before as well. But this one is for Vera project. They focusing on the ARR project. So it's about the experience and also. Sorry, my signal is jammed, so I can use it. So it's about the experience of them having a lot of planting activities, uh, and also the strong connection within the project areas that they work with. So yeah, I guess yeah. Yeah, I guess I think that's the end of the panel sessions of the panel discussions. If you have more, oh, sorry, there's one more. As we know, there are a national greening program in the Philippines, with the Philippine NGP also developed in the carbon project. And what is the current progress of NGP within the CATI and IP areas? Maybe you can answer it, Del. Oh yeah. Del can answer this.
NGPs can be included as part of Philippine commitment under Article 6, right? However, this cannot be used in voluntary carbon markets because it's the government implementing the national greening program. And at the same time, even national greening program, even the national greening program is not exempt from the FPIC requirement. So if it is conducted or it is done within ancestral domains, they will still undergo the process conducted by NCIP.
Oh, I see. I didn't know that before. So okay, thank you, Del. So I guess that's conclude our panel discussion. Thank you so much, Del, Nicole, Christos, and Vilma for the insightful sessions. If you have any more questions, feel free to email us and inform us, so we can take to our beautiful panel discussions today. So yeah, I think that's it for the panel sessions. We already have the photo session as well, so I'll leave it up to Willie as an MC
I think there is several part before we close it. So Willie, over to you.
Okay, thank you so much, Rizky, and to our wonderful panelists for that masterclass on the ARR landscape. It was such insightful and very progressive talks. It's clear there is so much potential in the Philippines. We know it, but potential alone is just not enough. And we still need strong collaborations between the government, the project developer, local communities, as well as with a strong regulation and policy in order to make it happen. And yeah, everyone, the session is not already over. We still have some session to do. And for the next session, after we discuss the opportunity and the updates of the carbon market in Philippines, a lot of you might be wondering, how do we actually get these projects off the ground efficiently? And this is actually a proud moment for us to officially launch our newest feature, the Reforestation engine. We already made a video about this, and please enjoy the video first. Okay, can the video is continue? Can you continue video, please? Okay, maybe to explain a bit about this feature, maybe a lot of us wondering, we know that okay, maybe the video is enough. Okay, everyone, we know that developing a carbon project can be overwhelming sometimes, and especially the development and the planting part is the most crucial and the most hardest part. And there is so many questions to answer, like you have to figuring out which species to plant, how many seedlings are needed, and what the actual cost will be. And actually, our reforestation engine is built to answer these questions. And actually, yeah, this feature is integrated within our AtmosTalk tools, and all you need to do is just to register to our AtmosTalk, submit your project using shapefile, and after you get the assessment results, you'll need to upgrade the plan from basic to premium in order for you to get the planting pattern report of your project area. And basically, what the engine does is it uses data-driven technology to generate automated planting patterns, specifically for your site needs. And with these informations, it will help you make your planting become more efficient and more effective. This engine will generate the results by considering some variables such as the space of land, the type of soils, and also the boundaries of your lands. And also, like always mentioned in the panel session before, the community itself is becoming the foundations of our carbon project, right? And this is actually also what our engine does. We will define and then we'll analyze the land, whether there's an existing agricultural plan owned by the community or not. And of course, it's designed to make professional scientific reforestation accessible to anyone, helping you from planning to planting much faster. And of course, if you still have questions regarding this feature, feel free to reach us out and go to our website, and we'll gladly help you with that. Okay. Now, for a bit of excitement, as a thank you for your active participation today, we have very special raffle prize. And one lucky winner will receive a 1 ton CO2 carbon offset certificate to jumpstart their own sustainability journey. My team will help with um, the winning spill. Okay, can we access the spinning wheel? Okay. Okay. On the count to 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, congratulations, Tomoki Izuka. Our team will reach out to you to send over your certificate. Thank you so much and congratulations. Okay, everyone, as we wrap up today's Atmos Talk, I want to thank our speakers, our partners, and also, most importantly, all of you attendees here for spending your time with us. Of course, the journey to restoring nature is a long one, but with the right tools and the right community and also the right partners, it is absolutely achievable. So for more information or to follow up on today's topics, please visit our website, www.fireatmos.com. Stay safe, stay green, and let's keep restore nature together. I'm Willie. I'm hope to see you at our next event. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you everyone. Bye. Leave ya. Okay.
Okay.